AmandaLand. PSA. So I feel like a lot of people will just simply pick one thing and be like, that's the thing. Racism, that's the thing. But what happens when we do that is that we forget to acknowledge the fact that there are things that are encompassing all of us in like much greater ways than we may give attention to. Climate change is that, in my opinion. I feel like we are cutting our noses off to spite our face when we don't continuously pour our energy into addressing climate change and how we as a nation are contributing to it. And in that, there is racism, of course, right? Because if something bad is happening in the world, then we always know that Black folks and just non-white folks are going to get the worst brunt of it. We know that countries in the global south are going to get the worst brunt of it. Like, we know that, right? I do feel, though, that there is an ignoring of climate change that happens by a lot of people who feel like, I don't need to pay attention to that because I'm paying attention to this. Whereas I believe anything that we're talking about right now should attach to climate change. If you're talking about racism, it should attach to climate change. If you're talking about immigrant reform, it should attach to climate change. If you're talking about DEI, if you're talking about women's health rights, it should attach to everything attaches to climate change, because the climate changing is shifting life for everybody. For everybody. Them people in the Palisades, them people thought, like, we're rich. We live literally on the hill looking over the ocean. We're protected. No. And of course, there have been people who have like their thoughts about how those fires started and why those fires started. But whatever reason they started for, they have been able to keep going because there is an extensive shift in the climate due to an extensive disregard for how we are changing the climate. This man said he wanted to change the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America, and that is only so that he can drill, baby, drill. When we talk about the executive orders that have been placed, like, this man is rolling back anything that is protecting anything. So when we talk about climate change and racism, let's try our best to stop having separate conversations about these things all the time and merge them. It's not like they have to always say concurrent, because there are definitely unique foci that need to be addressed, but we need to make it our business to merge them. Back in 2014, the Hip Hop Caucus had put together what was called the Toxic Tour. And it was me, Raheem Devon, and rapper D1. And we went on a tour of different cities in the United States that have been like really adversely impacted by climate change in their Black communities. So we went to Portsmouth, Virginia. We went to DC. We went to Detroit. We went to, I'm missing one. I think we went to somewhere in Texas, but we went to these different places, and it was unbelievable how directly impacted these communities were, but then how so many people failed to acknowledge that this was just as much of an important topic as Black people not being able to get funded for Black businesses. And so when Malika Jabali is on here talking about how corporate ends up being still the preferred way for Black people to advance, what we have to remember is that corporate is still a white colonialist construct that we are trying to step into, that we are mimicking, etc. And it's not to say that we can't make our own joint and have our own stuff and take what they do well and apply it to ourselves. I'm not saying that at all. But what I am saying is that simply making it possible for Black people to be able to do that is not a continual holistic view of how we can advance the people. And if we're not including climate change in these conversations, then we're not really having the conversation. It's the same way that if you're not addressing Israel, then you're not having a conversation about American government. Period. And that's my public service announcement. Um